The galaxy had forgotten what fear felt like. For more than 2 centuries, the Velcor Dominion ruled the stars with iron claws and plasma fire. Their fleets stretched from one end of the Orion Arm to the other. Every race in the Dominion obeyed their laws or faced destruction. No rebellion had ever lasted longer than a week. So when reports came of a small fleet rising against them at the edge of the Signia Rift, the Dominion didn't even take it seriously. Their admirals laughed. Their soldiers joked. The interstellar news called it a local misunderstanding. The rebel fleet had only 12 ships, tiny things compared to the Dominion's war cruisers. Each Velcor cruiser was the size of a city. The rebels' entire armada barely matched the size of one Velcor dreadnought. The aliens started calling them the Tiny Army. It became a running joke on every channel. In the Velcor capital, officers gathered in command centers, laughing as they watched live scans of the approaching battle. The Dominion fleet's flagship, Vengeance of Dawn, led the attack. Its commander, Admiral Vurok, had crushed more than 100 uprisings. To him, this one was just a waste of time. Inside his command chamber, Vurok leaned back in his chair, smirking as the scanners displayed the rebel formation. 12 small ships floating against an ocean of Dominion vessels. Pathetic, he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. They think they can fight us with scrap metal? His officers chuckled. One of them, a young lieutenant, asked, "Should we demand their surrender first, sir?" Vurok waved his hand dismissively. "No need, they'll surrender soon enough. Or they'll be space dust," he gave the order. "Open a public broadcast. Let's humiliate them before we end them." A glowing hollow screen flickered on. The connection stabilized and an image appeared. The bridge of the lead rebel ship. The background was dim, but one figure stood in front of the screen. A human woman with cold eyes and a calm face. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The Velcor officers stared in silence. Then the murmurs began. "Human? That can't be. They were extinct centuries ago." Vurok frowned. "Identify that species," he barked. His science officer hesitated. "Sir, records match. Ancient Terran DNA patterns. It's human." Now the laughter returned, louder than before. "Impossible," Vurok said, laughing himself. "Humans vanished after their homeworld burned. This must be a trick." The woman on the screen didn't react. She simply looked at them with steady, fearless eyes. "You've mistaken size for strength, Admiral," she said quietly. "That's a dangerous habit." The transmission cut off. Vurok sneered. "Arrogant creature. All ships, fire at will." The stars lit up with plasma fire as hundreds of Dominion cannons launched glowing bolts toward the 12 small ships. The space between them burned white-hot. But then something strange happened. The rebel ships didn't scatter. They moved together, tight and smooth like a single organism. They slid through the barrage with impossible precision, plasma bolts passing between them by meters. Their engines flared bright blue and they accelerated toward the Dominion fleet. "Sir, they're closing distance, fast," shouted one officer. Vurok grinned. "Good, let them come. When they get close, crush them." The first volley from the Dominion side missed. The second one hit, but only grazed the shields of one rebel ship. Then in a blink, the human ships returned fire, not with hundreds of cannons, but with a few sharp, focused shots. Each shot hit exactly where it needed to. Every impact turned a Dominion cruiser into a cloud of debris. "2 ships down," cried the sensor officer. Vurok slammed a clawed hand onto his control console. "Impossible. Their weapons are too small to—" Another explosion cut him off. A third Velcor ship vanished from the sensors. The Dominion fleet began to panic. Their formations fell apart. Their shots went wide. They couldn't track the human ships. Their movement was unpredictable, almost elegant. One Velcor captain shouted over the comms, "They're everywhere." "I can't lock on." Vurok roared in anger. "Regroup! All ships, surround them!" But by the time he gave the order, it was too late. Inside the human flagship Resolute, Captain Elena Rains watched the battle unfold from her command chair. Her crew worked with silent focus. Every move was practiced, every order clear. "Enemy formation collapsing," said Lieutenant Osei. "Targets Alpha through Delta are vulnerable." Rains nodded. "Fire the second wave. Target engines only." Small streaks of blue light darted across space. They struck the Dominion ships, crippling their propulsion. Massive cruisers spun out of control. colliding with each other in chaotic explosions. On the main screen, Rains saw the Velcor flagship desperately trying to escape. She watched it for a moment, then turned to her navigator. "Hold position," she said calmly. "Let them live. Fear will do more than fire." Her crew understood. The goal wasn't destruction, it was a message. Back aboard the Vengeance of Dawn, smoke filled the control deck. Systems flickered. Alarms screamed. Admiral Vorok slammed his fists on the table. "Who are they?" he growled. His communication officer spoke in a trembling voice. "The intercepted data calls them the 7th Terran Expeditionary Strike Wing, sir. Records say they disappeared during the solar collapse 500 years ago." Vorok froze. The name stirred an ancient memory. Long before the Dominion ruled, there had been stories, warnings from the first explorers of the galaxy. Stories about the humans. They were said to be the most dangerous species ever born, not because of their strength or size, but because of their will to survive. They didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. And when cornered, they fought harder than anyone imagined possible. Vorok clenched his claws. "Transmit to all Dominion fleets. The rebels are humans. I want every ship in this sector mobilized. Wipe them from existence." The officer nodded and began the transmission. But deep down, Vorok felt something he hadn't felt in decades, something he thought his species had evolved beyond. Fear. The battle lasted only 30 minutes. Out of 100 Dominion ships, only 20 survived. The rest floated as burning wrecks among the stars. The human fleet suffered no losses. As the smoke cleared, the Resolute drifted quietly through the wreckage. Its hull bore a few scorch marks, but it was otherwise untouched. Inside, Captain Rains stood in front of a holomap displaying the aftermath. "Send a message to the nearby colonies," she said. "The Terran 7th has returned. The galaxy will remember humanity." Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with determination. The humans had been forgotten, buried under centuries of alien rule. Their home had been destroyed, their people scattered. But they had survived. In deep space, hidden, waiting. And now, after centuries, they were back to reclaim their place among the stars. Across the galaxy, the footage of the battle spread like wildfire. At first, nobody believed it. But the data was real. Sensor logs, visuals, and distress calls from Velcor ships all confirmed it. The tiny fleet that had defeated the Dominion's armada was indeed human. The joke stopped. The laughter vanished. In every military council across every empire, a single phrase began to circulate. They mocked the tiny army, until they realized it had human soldiers. And somewhere deep in the darkness between stars, the humans prepared for what was coming next, because they knew the Dominion would not stop, but neither would they. The galaxy had not stopped talking about the battle at Cygna Rift. Every network replayed the same footage, 12 small human ships cutting through a Dominion fleet like it was nothing. At first, many believed it was fake. But when the Velcor Dominion itself confirmed the loss, the laughter across the stars vanished. Now there was only fear. The Dominion could not allow this to stand. Their reputation depended on power and control. Losing one fleet was bad enough, but losing to a tiny army was humiliation. So they gathered everything. 1,000 ships, a full armada, under the command of Lord Admiral Drex, the most ruthless officer in the Velcor Empire. His orders were simple: find them, destroy them, erase their name forever. Inside the human flagship Resolute, Captain Eleanor Rains stood before her bridge crew. The star map in front of her glowed red with enemy signatures. They were coming fast. She had only 12 ships, barely 200 soldiers, and limited supplies. But her eyes were calm. "Numbers don't decide battles," she said quietly. "Decisions do." Her crew nodded. They trusted her completely. Every man and woman aboard the Resolute knew what they were fighting for. Not territory, not conquest, but survival. Lieutenant Osei spoke up. "Admiral Drex's fleet will reach the rift in 40 hours. Rains looked at the map and smiled slightly. "Then we have 40 hours to make space work for us. Operation Stone Halo." The humans called their plan Stone Halo. It was not about brute strength. It was about strategy. They had learned long ago that the Dominion relied too much on size. Their fleets moved like walls, strong but slow, predictable. Rains and her team had scouted the area around the rift for weeks. It was filled with asteroids, magnetic storms, and unstable gravity pockets. Perfect terrain for a trap. They placed dozens of graviton mines inside the asteroid field, devices that could bend space-time for a few seconds. To an approaching ship, they would look like harmless rocks, until it was too late. Commander Haru, the tactical officer, ran simulations. If the Dominion enters the rift in formation, we can crush at least half their fleet before they realize what's happening. Good, Rains said. Let them come. 40 hours later, the Velcor Armada arrived. From the viewports of the Resolute, the stars disappeared behind a wall of ships, dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers. They looked like a storm made of metal and fire. Admiral Drex's fleet entering the field, Ose reported. They're scanning, but they haven't detected our mines. Rains smiled. They never do, she gave the order. Power down all systems. Go dark. The human fleet drifted silently through the shadow of the asteroids. No lights, no signals, no movement. Just silence. The Dominion ships advanced confidently. They had destroyed hundreds of rebels before. To them, this was just another extermination. Inside his command ship Iron Fang, Admiral Drex watched the radar screens. No sign of the enemy, his officer said. They're hiding, Drex replied. But space is large. They can't hide forever. Continue forward. The first ship entered the rift's central corridor, then another, then 50 more. And then, Rains pressed the switch. The stars themselves seemed to twist. The asteroids glowed for a split second, and then gravity bent. Dozens of Dominion ships were pulled off course, crashing into each other. Hulls crumpled like paper. The rest of the fleet tried to turn, but the mines exploded, warping space around them. Sir, gravity surge detected.
We're being pulled in,
shouted one of Drex's officers. Stabilize the engines. Now, Drex roared, but it was too late. The first shockwave ripped through their formation. In seconds, 50 ships were gone. Out of the darkness, the human fleet appeared. Small, fast, precise. They moved through the chaos like hunters through fog. Their weapons glowed blue, cutting through the massive Dominion ships one by one. Target engines only, Rains ordered. Disable them. Make them watch. On the Iron Fang, Admiral Drex stared at the impossible sight before him. 12 small ships destroying hundreds of his war machines. His mind refused to believe it. Who trained them? He whispered. How can such a small force do this? His first officer replied, terrified. They're human, sir. Drex slammed his fist into the console. Human or not, they will die. He turned to his fleet. All remaining ships focus fire on their lead vessel. Bring it down! The Dominion ships opened fire. Thousands of plasma bolts lit up the rift like a new sunrise. The Resolute shook violently as shields flared. Shields down to 60%. Osi shouted. Rains stayed calm. Return fire. Concentrate on their flagships. And tell the Vanguard to flank left. The Vanguard, a small human corvette, raced ahead through the storm. Its pilot, Lieutenant Mora, gritted her teeth as she maneuvered between explosions. We're in position, Captain. Rains gave the signal. Now. The Vanguard released a quantum EMP pulse, an ancient Terran weapon banned by most galactic treaties. It didn't destroy ships. It shut them down completely. A silent wave rolled across the battlefield. One by one, Dominion ships went dark. Their engines died. Their weapons froze. Their lights vanished. The human ships glided among the giants, firing only when necessary, disabling more and more. In less than an hour, the mighty Dominion Armada was paralyzed. When the smoke cleared, Admiral Drex's ship floated helplessly among hundreds of disabled vessels. His comms crackled. Unidentified transmission incoming, his officer said. Put it through. The hollow screen flickered. Captain Rains appeared, calm as ever. Behind her, the human flag hung on the wall, a symbol of Earth long thought extinct. Admiral, she said softly, you came with 1,000 ships. You'll leave with none. Tell your Dominion what you saw here. Drex's jaw tightened. You think this is over, human? The Dominion will never bow to you. Rains looked at him with cold eyes. We don't want your throne. We only want freedom. But if you come for us again, you'll learn why your ancestors feared us. The screen went dark. Hours later, in the Dominion capital, panic filled the council chambers. Drex's report had arrived, along with sensor data confirming the total loss of his fleet. The High Chancellor slammed the table. 1,000 ships. Destroyed by 12? Are you telling me this isn't some kind of trick? Drex, pale and shaken, replied, "No trick, my lord. They fought like demons. Every move was calculated. Every hit was perfect. They knew exactly how we would react before we did." "Humans," whispered one council member. "We thought they were myths." "They're not myths anymore," Drex said grimly. "They're real, and they're angry." Meanwhile, in the Cygna Rift, the humans repaired their ships. The crew of the Resolute walked through the hangar, exhausted but proud. The air smelled of fuel and metal. Lieutenant Osi approached Captain Rains. "We did it," he said quietly. Rains nodded. "For now. Do you think they'll stop?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, they'll come again, bigger next time. But we'll be ready." She looked out the viewport at the stars, the same stars that had once watched humanity fall. Now they watched humanity rise again. The message Rain stood before a communication console. She began recording a message, her voice calm and strong. "To every free world that hears this, we are the Terran 7th. We survived the collapse. We've returned to defend our right to exist. The Dominion calls us the tiny army. Let them. We may be small, but our will is unbreakable." She paused, then added, "Join us or simply remember this. Humanity fights not to conquer, but to endure." She ended the transmission. Across nearby systems, colonies that had long lived under Dominion rule listened in silence. Many wept. Some cheered. For the first time in centuries, hope returned to the galaxy. In the Dominion's Secret Intelligence Division, scientists analyzed battle data obsessively. One researcher whispered to another, "Their ships are outdated, their weapons old, yet they fight like gods." "Because they are human," the other replied, "and humans never fight to win. They fight because losing isn't an option." The phrase spread quietly through the underworld of the Dominion military. Fear the tiny army. A few weeks later, reports came in of small uprisings on distant planets. Colonists and slaves were taking up arms, painting old Terran flags on their walls. The Dominion sent troops to crush them, but this time, the people didn't surrender. They fought harder. They had seen the videos. They had heard the message. And now, they believed. As the Resolute continued its silent journey through the stars, Captain Rains looked over the bridge. Her crew was tired but ready. She spoke quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. "We were forgotten. Now they'll remember." The stars outside shimmered against the black void, and somewhere far away, the hum of war drums began to echo again. Humanity had awakened, and this war, the one they didn't see coming, was only the beginning. End of Part 2. Silence filled the galaxy after the Battle of the Cygna Rift. For the first time in hundreds of years, the Velcor Dominion, the most powerful empire in the known universe, was afraid. 1,000 of their ships had vanished against a force so small that some officers still refused to believe the reports. But the data didn't lie. The tiny army was real, and it was human. Across the stars, whispers spread like wildfire. Humans are back. Some species celebrated in secret. Others panicked. Old stories came alive again. Stories of a race that once ruled the stars through courage, not cruelty. A race that refused to kneel. The Dominion tried to control the chaos. They shut down networks, silenced reporters, and arrested anyone who spoke about humans. But it didn't matter. The truth was already out there. A storm of fear inside the Dominion's Grand Council Hall on Orpheon Prime. The galaxy's leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. The hall was massive, its ceiling glowing with shifting light from 1,000 star systems represented within. At the center stood Lord Admiral Drex, the man who had lost 1,000 ships to the humans. He looked tired, older somehow, his scales dull from stress. The Chancellor slammed his claws on the table. "Explain this, Admiral. You commanded the largest fleet in our history and returned with nothing but shame." Drex bowed his head. "My lord, we underestimated them. Their ships are small, but their tactics—" "Excuses!" roared another council member. "How can a handful of relic ships defeat a Dominion armada?" Drex raised his eyes. "Because they are not like us. They fight differently. They think differently. Every move they make is deliberate. Every shot means something. They are human." The room went silent. The word carried weight. Even after centuries, it still made people uneasy. The Chancellor leaned forward. "You are suggesting myths, Admiral. Humans died when their sun collapsed. Their world is gone, Drek shook his head. Their world, yes, but not their will. He activated a hologram of the battle. The council watched in stunned silence as 12 tiny ships moved through the Dominion fleet, precise and deadly. They fight with mathematics and instinct, Drek said. They don't waste a single movement. They don't run. They don't surrender. I saw it with my own eyes. There is no fear in them, the Chancellor growled. Then we will erase them again, this time completely. Prepare the Grand Armada. A message from the stars far away, aboard the Resolute. Captain Elena Rains watched the same galaxy preparing for war. Her communications officer reported that the Dominion was gathering a force 5 times larger than before. They'll be here in less than a week, said Lieutenant Osei. Rains nodded slowly. Then we'll be ready before they arrive. She looked around her bridge, her crew tired but still standing tall. Every face told the same story. They had fought too hard to give up now. Commander Haru stepped forward. Captain, if they bring that many ships, even our tactics may not be enough. Rains didn't argue. She knew he was right. 12 ships could not win forever against endless numbers, but humans had never believed in impossible. Then we'll change the fight, she said softly. We'll remind them that wars aren't just won by weapons. She turned to Osei. Open a broadcast channel to every world that still listens. Moments later, her voice echoed through the galaxy. To all who hear this is Captain Elena Rains of the Terran 7th Expeditionary Wing. The Velcor Dominion calls us the Tiny Army. They mock our size, our ships, our strength. But know this, humanity is not small. We are vast. We are every survivor, every rebel, every free soul who refuses to bow. Her voice was calm but powerful. We fight not for conquest, but for freedom. Stand with us or simply remember this. No empire lasts forever, especially one that fears 12 ships. Her message spread faster than any Dominion sensor could block. All across the stars, enslaved colonies and broken worlds began to stir. People looked up at the sky and whispered a single name. Humanity, the Council's response. The message reached Orpheon Prime within hours. The Council raged. The Chancellor shouted for immediate retaliation. But something strange was happening outside their borders. Reports came in from distant planets, rebellions. Small uprisings, coordinated attacks. Not just humans. Other species too. They were rising in the name of the Terran 7th. The Dominion tried to crush them, but the fires only spread faster. They've infected the stars, muttered Drex. The Chancellor turned on him. You caused this. You let them live. Drex stood his ground. If I had killed them, we'd have learned nothing. But now I understand them. You can't destroy what they represent. What are they then? The Chancellor hissed. Drex's voice was quiet. Hope. The final battle 3 days later. The largest fleet in recorded history arrived at the Cygna Rift. 5,000 ships strong. They blotted out the stars, a metal sea stretching across space. The Resolute floated in their path, surrounded by its 11 companion ships. Inside, the human crew worked in silence. The tension was heavy, but there was no fear. Each person knew what they were part of, a story that would outlive them. Enemy fleet approaching, Osei reported. They're forming attack lines. Rains stood tall. Then let's give them something to remember. The humans launched the final phase of Operation Stone Halo, Phase Omega. Hidden satellites around the rift came alive, projecting powerful energy barriers that twisted gravity. The Dominion ships slowed as their systems struggled to adapt. Then, the human fleet dove straight into the heart of the formation. It was madness or genius. The Velcor ships opened fire, but their own shots curved off course. The rift distorted everything, light, gravity, even time. Inside the chaos, human ships moved like ghosts. Their engines flared white, their weapons firing in perfect rhythm. One by one, Dominion ships fell. Not because of power, but precision. Admiral Drex watched the battle from his command ship. He didn't speak for several minutes. He just watched in awe and disbelief. Finally, he whispered to his officers, "Do you understand now? They don't fight for territory. They fight because they refuse to be forgotten." The turning point hours passed. The battlefield was a graveyard of wrecked ships. The Dominion still had more numbers, but their morale was broken. Then, in the middle of the fight, something unexpected happened. The Dominion's flagship received a transmission, not from the humans, but from hundreds of their own soldiers, rebellion. Inside their ranks, Velcor crews were refusing to fight. Some even turned their guns away. The human message had reached them too. Admiral Drex looked at his display in disbelief. "They're defecting?" His second officer nodded. "They're saying they no longer fight for tyranny. They fight for freedom." The old admiral leaned back in his chair and let out a tired breath. "So this is how they win. Not with power, with belief." The end of the Dominion, by the next day, it was over. The Dominion fleet was shattered not only in body but in spirit. Many ships fled. Others surrendered. The humans didn't chase them. They didn't need to. When the battle ended, the Resolute drifted quietly among the ruins of what had once been the greatest empire in the galaxy. Captain Rains stood at the viewport, watching the burning ships fade into the distance. Lieutenant Osei approached her. "It's over," he said softly. Rains nodded. "For now. Do we go home?" She looked at him for a long time before answering. "There is no home," she said. "Not anymore. But maybe we'll build one again." Her voice softened. "Not just for humans. For everyone who wants to live free." A new dawn. Months later, the galaxy began to change. Worlds once ruled by the Dominion declared independence. Trade routes reopened. Peace talks began between species that had once hated each other. And somewhere at the heart of it all, the humans, the so-called tiny army, became a symbol. Their faces appeared on murals. Their story spread to every world. Children grew up hearing how 12 ships had humbled an empire. Even Admiral Drex, who had once sworn to destroy them, retired quietly to a distant moon. He spent the rest of his life studying the humans' ways, trying to understand the secret of their strength. One day he wrote a single line in his report. "The humans are not powerful because they are many. They are powerful because they believe they can be." The Council of Peace years later, representatives from dozens of worlds gathered on a neutral planet to form the Interstellar Union, a council built on equality, not fear. At the center of the hall stood Captain Elena Rains, now Admiral of the new Terran Alliance. She wore no crown, no special uniform, only a simple black jacket with the faded insignia of the Terran Seventh. When she spoke, her words carried across the hall and into history. "The Dominion ruled with power. We choose something greater, respect. We have all made mistakes, but now we have a chance to build something that lasts. Remember this, strength is not about numbers. It is about will." The hall erupted in applause. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy wasn't laughing at humanity. It was standing beside them. The legend lives on many years later. Children across the stars studied the Battle of the Cygna Rift. Teachers told them about the day when 12 ships stood against thousands and didn't fall. They called it the Day of the Tiny Army. And every time a young cadet hesitated before a challenge, someone would whisper the ancient saying that began it all. They mocked the tiny army until they realized it had human soldiers.